Hello, I'm Edward Asner. In the fall of 2001, the International Association of Machinists sought to capture the epic response of America's workers to the attacks of September 11th. The voices you'll hear, the faces you'll see, are not alone. Thousands of men and women worked right alongside them at Ground Zero and the Pentagon in the rescue, recovery, and rebuilding efforts. None of those interviewed thought of themselves as heroes, yet theirs is a special kind of courage. Every day they go to work. Every day they use their skills. Every day they do what they do and prove what America is all about. September 11th reminds us that everyday heroes are as near as a next-door neighbor.
It was unbelievable what I saw there. As far as I can see behind me was done construction workers, welders, caterers, electricians. As far back as 34th Street, you had lines of people waiting to help.
I'll tell you, I had never been so proud of the people I work with. We had 2,300 of our people working there, mainly hard hats. All the construction trade people were there. Hundreds and hundreds of people.
They were fighting their way to get in. They would have done anything to get in there to help those people, and I was never more proud to be a member of this organization. Never more proud.
You know, we feel that the firemen or police, it's their job probably to be there, but it's not a carpenter's job or a laborer's job to run down to a building that was blown up or on fire. But they didn't think about that. They just thought about their fellow workers and their fellow New Yorkers, and they went down to do everything they can do to help.
We came to record the stories of the working men and women who shared a sense of commitment, responsibility, and duty to their communities, fellow workers, and country. Many shared their experiences for the first time. Some, for the first time, revisited the site where they spent countless sleepless hours. Their grief expresses the anguish, sorrow, and resolve of a whole nation.
We were preparing for September 11th, which was the elections, mayoral elections. We were doing some postering. It was 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'm on the West Side Highway. It's a beautiful night. Everything is lit up, you know how New York is at night, and the only thing I see, the most dominant thing I see, is the World Trade Center.
It was kind of a happy day for us because my wife was on the ballot. She was running for judge. She later won the election.
I was with a group of EMTs and paramedics that were getting ready to help with campaign activities for the New York primary.
Election days are always very busy. It's always a big day for the union because we mobilize all our membership.
I was coordinating one of the city council races, the union response to that. That was out in Queens.
So I was up in the Bronx, wave footing and stuff.
The guy I was helping was a union president, and he was running for the city council.
So I just voted with my family, and I was on the way to work on the Long Island Expressway. And of course, like everyone else, I was bitching and moaning about traffic.
I had just gone out to vote, and I lived down by the World Trade Center, and I came out, and there were people there handing out palm cards for various candidates who I supported, so I told them I'd help them for a few hours.
I put up some posters right there at Trinity Church, right where everything happened. And I'm looking up, and wow, this is a huge place, and I'm thinking how awesome it is, and how it's been here forever.
And as I sat in that traffic, I stared off out to the left, which was where the World Trade Center was, at the skyline, and saw a plane out of place.
The next thing I know, I saw a plane flying over my head, and the plane was flying very low, and I was talking to this woman. I says, "This guy must be crazy." I says, "He's going to hit the building."
I heard the explosion, and immediately I thought it was a bomb.
Tower 1 was on fire. You could see debris flying off the building.
Tower 1 was engulfed in flames, heavy smoke coming out of the tower.
It was like surreal to see a plane flying into a building. It was like he didn't veer off, he didn't do anything, he just went straight into the building.
There seemed to be a controlled chaos as the police officers and firefighters and the Port Authority police officers, they were working, getting people out of the building.
Hundreds of people running out, clearing the area, telling people to get out.
The firemen are running into the building, bringing people out. Police officers, the EMS workers were there. We were all at the base of these towers, across the street from these towers.
We had to be very careful because there was a lot of debris coming down, but there was also a lot of bodies coming down. There was people jumping, people falling.
Our thought was at the time is we have to get into that building and stop these people from jumping. We'll get to them. We'll get them out. One at a time, but we'll get them out. We've gone through this before.
One of the EMS chiefs grabs my partner and says, 18 Charlie, that's the unit we were. Come on, we're going in.
As we were going up the stairwells, the people were coming down, and they weren't in a state of panic. They were pretty orderly coming down the stairs. Some of them had water bottles, and they were offering us the water as they were going down, you know.
And we're entering Tower 1, and the last thing my partner told me was, we shouldn't be here.
A sound you never thought you'd take note of. The sound of another plane came, and then, as we know, that plane hit the South Tower. So about 20-25 minutes again of controlled chaos, professionals, union people going, doing their job, and then there was 3 explosions.
And at that moment, you just heard this loud, rumbling noise, and we look up and you can just see this cloud coming down.
And the South Tower leaned forward and then came down like an accordion.
You look up and you see the tower tilt and the glass break off, and then the wave just start coming down. That's when you get really scared.
When the tower came down, it sounded like a freight train. It sounded like a freight train.
The ceilings came down. The whole building was shaking violently. Walls are cracking, the lights went out.
We were able to get into a corner of the building across the street, which was 3 of the walls. We were in that corner was glass. And while the debris was hitting us, you thought at the time, well, I might buy it today, but if it doesn't get worse than this, we'll be all right. But then the cloud came, the black cloud. It seemed like it rose from your feet and just enveloped you. And that's when you realized that you stopped breathing. Your family, your children run through your head, all the things you wonder what happens. Well, that started happening. And I'll be the first one to say, I've never been so scared in my life.
I hid under a table, and for about 5-10 minutes, just literally cried and prayed, you know, while all of this was coming down.
One of the police officers had the wherewithal and the thought of mind to shoot out the windows. So when the windows got shot out, that gave us the ability to get into the lobby across the way and for a second to be able to breathe. But then, of course, that cloud then followed us into that lobby.
I'm under this table, and you know, the debris flying, the smoke, it's totally pitch black. And after about 5 to 6, 7 minutes, however long, there was dead silence. Dead silence.
It seemed like it went on forever at that point. But then in hindsight, you found out that it only took 8 seconds for that tower to come down. You would never think that 110 stories of just the one tower would come down in 8 seconds, but it did. It happened that quickly, but time started to go slow. You know, time was not part of your process during this crisis. It just got lost.
I happened to be trapped with about 3 other firemen, and we were just screaming on our radios, Mayday, Mayday, 1013, you know, we're trapped, what's going on?
We just got ourselves together and went back into the stairwell, and there's still people coming down the stairs, so we just kept assisting these people down to the plaza, the mall level, to get them out of the building.
Fortunately for us, a wall had collapsed, which we were able to climb out into the streets. And I didn't even know I was in the streets until I walked into a light pole. That's how black and dark it was.
You could hardly see. You really could hardly see. There was water from, I guess, the sprinklers was pouring down the stairs. But for the most part, the people, you know, they were determined that they were going to come out. And for the most part, they did.
And we walked about a block and a half towards the waterway. And at that time, all these little boats were coming over from Jersey, and we were just putting people, patients, you know. Billy and I helped a fireman who had lost all his fingers and put him on this boat, and Billy got on the boat because he was disorientated. I put a captain of mine on the boat, and at that moment, you hear that same sound again, that rumbling, freight train, eerie, and behind us, the tower that we were in starts coming down.
Everything just went black. For myself, when I was laying on the floor, this thunder's crashing going on around you. You could feel stuff piling up on your back. And myself, I said, well, I guess this is it for me. I said goodbye to my wife and my kids. And I was basically ready to go. And I was just waiting for something to hit me. And all of a sudden, as quick as it came, it stopped. And there was dead silence.
It was pitch black. You couldn't see anything. You could feel the heat. We didn't have time for put our masks on and everything, so we would take a real good mouthful of everything that came down. I really thought it was, it was over. I thought it was, it was the end.
And then I started hearing and feeling everybody moving around amongst us, calling out, grabbing onto each other. I figured, we got some kind of a chance here.
I feel like if I was in there, I want someone to try to save me. So that's what I was thinking when I went in, I mean, you take an oath, to try to save lives the best you can. I really didn't think about me. I was just trying to get the people out. And I think most people that went in weren't thinking about themselves.
It wasn't a job at that point. It was a duty, an obligation, I don't know, a calling. It was something that you have to.
Well, the Pentagon is like 5 giant high-rises laying on its side, 6.6 million square feet of office space. So, you get a fire in a structure that big, you've got a huge fire. But along with that, it was also an airplane crash and a building collapse, as well as a crime scene and a terrorist act. So you can plan on worst-case scenario, maybe 2 of those things happening at once. But to have 5 of those things happen at one time was an extreme event to handle.
There wasn't any time to think. You just had to react. We were one of the first medics on the scene, and we were expecting mass casualties, hundreds of people, so we immediately got the oxygen bottles out. It was time to go to work.
I'm 6'5", and I felt the need to duck. I thought sure it was coming right over my head. I saw a shadow, then I heard a noise. That's when I ducked and saw the plane go into the Pentagon.
I heard Merlin screaming that he had saw a plane hit the Pentagon, and with that I just took off and started responding to his location.
And I was told there were people inside. I got back and told my dispatcher that I was going in.
I was listening for Merlin because I heard him screaming on the radio that he was going in, that there were people in there.
And the walls were caving in and the ceiling had fallen down. I mean, it was just like everything coming down on you. If you could imagine what hell is like, magnified by 10. I couldn't see. You can see your hand in front of your face.
And I just started screaming for Merlin. I could hear him screaming back, and then we just encountered each other in a hallway, which was what was left of a hallway, I should say. We started searching for other survivors in the hallways, and one of the hallways was just thick with smoke. The door at the end was glowing red, so we knew there was fire down there. My mind was more focused on looking for people. And we made it to the top floor. We saw fire personnel. They told us to evacuate. And as we came down, I knew I was in trouble because I couldn't breathe that well. And then once we got outside, I collapsed. I had thermal burns internally, and they rushed me down to the hospital, and they induced me to a coma. I woke up. It was Saturday. I don't recall anything in between.
Hector Ramirez, he's a train operator on the R line. I used to work with him.
They instructed myself and all other trains to continue in service, but shut off the air comfort and bypass Cortlandt Street World Trade Center. It's standard when there's light smoke just to bypass the station.
He and his conductor, they pulled the train into the Cortlandt Street with the intention of following orders and bypassing, and there were dozens and dozens of people on the platform, screaming and crying and asking for help.
Now, as I'm entering the station, this is Cortlandt Street World Trade Center, I started hitting the horn with a few short blasts to let people know to stand back from the edge. That's what we do as we enter the station that we're planning to bypass. I saw smoke as I approached the station. A lot of people were covering their faces with handkerchiefs, pieces of material, and just waving at me.
He called command center and said, I'm stopping this train and I'm getting these people on the train. I cannot leave them here.
There was this one person, it's like I locked on their eyes for maybe just a second, but their eyes, it really told me everything I needed. These people were truly scared. Usually people are annoyed when we bypass a station, but these people were scared. I let my conductor know that we were going to stop, we're going to pick these people up, and what I tried to do is I tried to lead them to give me permission to stop. Basically let them know, listen, there's smoke down here, there's people down here, we need to get people down here to get them out. And my conductor was already getting the people on when command was like, yes, pick them up. And I was like, yes! We got as many people on as we could. Basically, the station was clear by then.
And he did. He got all those people on the train and got his train out of there. And I think his was the last train out of there. So if they didn't get on there with him, they were going to be there when that building came down. And he's not alone. There's a lot of people out there that went above and beyond.
There are 8 schools within 2, 3, 4 blocks of the World Trade Center. But those 8 schools held 8,000 kids. And what was miraculous about that day is that every single child within our watch was safely brought home by that night.
We're close, so close to those girls. You know, we're like a team, you know, we're like a family.
Margaret and Julia are paraprofessionals who took kids in wheelchairs, knowing that their lives were at risk, stayed with their kids who were in wheelchairs.
That was loud. That was in a helicopter. That was in a little plane by mistake. It wasn't foggy out there.
Y mientras estaba allí en esa situación, no es fácil usted poder oír decirle a una persona, yo no quiero morir. Cuando ella decía, Mami, I don't want to die. Yo le decía, tú no vas a morir, hija mía. Y ella me lo repetía y me lo repetía.
I'm screaming and shouting, please, someone help us. But I'm trying to follow the voices because we can't see anything.
These paras helped carry the kids from wheelchairs down the stairs, and they just said, we're going to keep these kids safe. This was the 4th day of school. The teachers barely knew their kids, and yet, because of their professionalism, because of their love of kids, because of their basic common sense, they were able to help shepherd all these children to safety.
after the buildings went down, every construction job in the city stopped. And construction workers and machinists and our railroad people carried every piece of tool and equipment that they had down to the pile.
The guys started to clear off the jobs in the city, and then before you know it, we were inundated with volunteers, all the other trades, looking for a way to get down to help. We actually had caravans going down, 5, 6 trucks with a police bus in the front, police bus in the back, and guys would go down and they just did what they had to do for as long as they could.
I don't know how I ended up on Canal and West Street, but I ended up on Canal and West, and this bus pulled up. It was like something you'd take to Atlantic City, like the 20-passenger bus, and a bunch of guys jumped out, and they had chains draped over their necks, and they said to me, I'm sitting on the corner, and they said to me, "We're iron workers. Where'd this building fall? We're going to go down and pick it up." And I laughed, and it was like, down there, right down there. And these guys, I mean, they were picking up chains that I don't even think, normal people could have even fathomed to pick them up. And they were all set to go. Where is it? Where do we go? And what do you think we need?
Looking out the doors from where I was, out the bay doors, you would see World Trade Center 4 and 2 would be on the side. But there was nothing there except a pile of debris. And I still to today cannot believe that place is down.
And I remember all the firemen and the police and the noise and everything, and it was like hollow, like there was no sound. Because I just looked at this and I says, I can't believe this. I just can't believe this.
There was a lot of people digging. I mean, you just ran right into the pile and did whatever was you had to do. You're filling buckets with debris.
Wrapped around the steel beams and the girders and the huge pieces of concrete was every imaginable piece of debris. Trees, parts of cars, ducting, wires, all of that had to be cleared away by hand before they could actually move any of the heavy stuff.
They would be bringing down rubble, and when you're bringing down rubble, you're just passing it along, you know what I mean? But then all of a sudden they'd say, personal effects, and like I said, it would be like somebody's personal planner or a wallet or something like that. It would kind of hit you, You realize that you're actually working like in a big tomb.
And there was so much stuff we couldn't even climb over it. It was almost impossible to even walk over there. It was just overwhelming.
It's just backbreaking. I mean, you'd get to something that'd take 8 people to pull something up, and then you hand it hand over hand over this mountain of stuff. I mean, it was like very dangerous. People were falling and hurting themselves.
I went in, I was cutting steel. Beams were sticking out of the pile because it was a 4-story high pile of twisted steel and God knows what else.
And there would be times they thought this building on Liberty, they thought that was going to fall down. I think it's a 52-story building right on the edge of the site on Church Street. So they kept thinking this building was going to collapse. So they'd blow this horn 3 times, and I mean, everybody would just run. You'd be out in the middle of this debris, and you'd be trying to run off these, tripping over beams, and people were falling and getting hurt, and just scattering down these side streets, And then they'd say, "Okay, everybody back," to give an all-clear signal, and people just trudge right back in there and start handing out this debris.
It was terrible in one sense, and then it was great to see the other trades, the firemen, the police, and just really being Americans down there and doing the right thing to actually, with the right frame of mind, to see if we could find somebody. That was pretty much who we were down there. As bad as it was, we did the best we could under the circumstances.
There was no organization the first 2 days especially. The people that were directing things were the iron workers, some of the subway workers, construction crews. They got in and started things, and there was, certain police and firemen, but most of the police and fire commands were just wiped out. They were inside the World Trade Center when everything collapsed. It was very hard to coordinate things.
It was just a lot of stuff. Everyone was there and did what they had to do. I mean, there was a point where I was down with maybe tons of steel hanging over my own head, and my partner Danny Burns had to lay on my legs, and I was down inside a hole, burning steel out of a hole so that a fireman could go into a hole to investigate and see if there was anyone alive.
You'd uncover something, there'd be a hole, and everybody get their flashlights and reaching in and seeing if you see a hand or anything so that you can find somebody, or listening to see if anybody's making any noise or anything.
Had hundreds of workers, everything just shut down and quiet, and listen. Everybody just listened. If they heard anything tapping or anything, and nothing.
You couldn't tell what was going on in the zone. It was such a massive site of destruction. You couldn't even tell what was going on the other side of the rubble pile because you couldn't get there without walking blocks around.
Really was a source of pride for the New York Iron Workers, the Trade Center. And those guys know that building, the core of the building and the outside of the building, is probably the heaviest steel that was ever used in any construction. And that if there were people trapped down there, that you would have to cut through steel to get to those people. And the guys who cut through steel are iron workers.
I come from a firefighter family, and 2 of my cousins were there when the building went down. I had a reason to be there. I had family under there. They were just doing this out of their heart, and it made me feel really good.
I mean, I can't describe it, and I really can't even to this day really tell you exactly how I felt or what was going through my head other than just terrific. But that's where I had to be. I mean, that's where I had to be, and that's where everybody had to be, and that was the sense of the guys down there.
Over the days, you saw the iron workers and the carpenters and the electricians and the operating engineers and all these people just pouring in, and I knew that I had to be there. I was down there doing what I had to do as a paramedic, but these people had a choice. They didn't have to. Nobody expected them to be there. Nobody said, come on down. These guys with hard hats and T-shirts they just showed up.
Everyone was just pitching in, every trade. And we ran into a bunch of guys that we knew, that we had worked with before, and we just started picking steel and throwing it on trucks.
We hear so much about the men at the site, and the one person that struck me most was this female welder. She just never stopped. I mean, it was really exhausting. We'd stop and sit on the plow of the bulldozers, and this woman was amazing. She just didn't stop. She was cutting pieces of steel all night long and just kept going. I wish I could find out who she was. She had a Transit Authority vest on, and I tried to find her. I went to the track quarters after that, to the different track quarters. I was never able to find her.
We carried bodies out of there, and all of this. I was at one point carrying a body out and crossing rubble. EMS trucks flipped over, burned out fire truck, and it was just a horrible mess.
This guy woke me up on the train, and he asked me how things were going down there, and if there was any hope of finding anybody or anything. And, I thought about it first because I was really depressed, but I said, did you know anyone that was lost down there? And he says, yeah, my cousin. And I said, well, there's still hope, you know what I mean? Because I didn't know what to say to the guy. I mean, I didn't want to You know, because I was kind of depressed that we weren't going to be finding anybody, or I didn't think we were going to be finding anybody, but I didn't know what to say to the poor guy, you know what I mean? I didn't know.
We actually found a fireman that was trapped underneath a set of stairs. And thank God we found this man, this fireman, where we were able to do something. We felt helpless. We had so many guys trying to dig this man out so fast. We picked up pieces of steel. Took 4 of us just to pick it up, and we used that as pry bars to lift stuff up. He was screaming in pain, but it was nice to hear him screaming, because if he was screaming, he was alive.